The jack of all trades but a master of none is often still better than the master of one. Hey guys, I'm DMS. You're watching the Headphone Show with Headphones.com. Today I have the Focal Clear, the OG version, and this is actually a headphone that I bought myself a while back. I'm sure the intro gave you a little bit of an idea as to what's to come, but let's get started. Building comfort. Focal headphones are pretty standard fit as far as headphones are concerned. If standard shaped headphones fit you well, then so do these. They basically take anything that is extremely traditional on headphone fit and do a slightly better job of it. We have cups that tilt, we have cups that swivel, good padding all the way around, nice large internal ear volume, and a design that's very open and very breathable. In the light, you can basically see through the entire cup, and you get a clear view of the dynamic driver inside. Like most Focal headphones, the construction is very, very appealing in the hand and to the eyes. You can see the glisten of the back of the driver behind the Focal logo on the back. Everywhere you feel is just quality materials, and there really isn't much to complain about. This headphone has dual 3.5mm entry on the bottom, so you can run it balanced if you want, and it's one of the few headphones I can wear all day. I do also enjoy the fact that these yokes are slightly spring-loaded, so they always apply adequate pressure to the bottom, and it comes out pretty evenly distributed. A problem I have with a lot of headphones is temple pressure, and well, these feel pretty spot on and even across the board. They're also not huge. I mean, this is still bigger than your active ANC headphones, but it's not a massive headphone sticking out the sides of my head. I mean, aside from its color scheme being a bit reflective, it doesn't call too much attention to itself. Well, let's get into the fun stuff, what you guys came here for, and talk about sound. Subjective first, and frequency response after that. The Focal Clear is something that I would describe as the dynamic version of the Aria Stealth. Now, you might be thinking, wait, those headphones sound completely different, and they do, but I'm talking about more in terms of function. See, the Aria Stealth is one of those headphones that does pretty much everything well. Doesn't do any one thing better than the rest, but it does every single thing well. Comfort, build, tuning, soundstage detail, and so on. And in that, well, the Focal Clear is very similar. It does everything well. It's not the master of detail. It's not the master of soundstage. It's not the master of tuning, but it does all of those things very well. The areas where this excels over the rest is in dynamics. The Clear is a very dynamic sounding headphone. It's reasonably impactful. It has decent bass, but not emphasized much over the rest of the frequency range. Vocal presence is very nice. Vocal clarity is great too. Imaging is more than I would actually expect from a headphone at this price range. And the only area I feel like it is even remotely lacking in terms of sound is timbre. This isn't to say the timbre is bad, but it can be improved. Being a person who cares a lot about timbre myself, well, I sought to try and answer this. And we will, a little bit later in the video during power. But as for the rest of it, well, it's a pretty great sounding headphone. Vocals can be a bit forward, and there are some tracks that can lean into shouty territory, but not as much as other headphones I've heard, like the Aeon Noir, which still got tons of praise from me. And as picky as I am about headphones, well, it's not often that I'll spend this much to buy one myself to add to my collection. And think about that for a second. I can get free headphones realistically if I want from all over the place, and I chose to buy this one. That definitely makes it something special to me. And when listening, what I get is a very well-rounded listening experience. Nothing's particularly out of place. Everything is just as it should be, and we get a very middle-of-the-road, high-end headphone experience. And in a range where a lot of headphones in the high-end seem to vary to extremes on one end or the other, being super warm, super bright, having strange comfort issues, or going way outside the box, we end up with a headphone that made a lot of safe calls and ended up being very much in the middle of all of those things. It's the safe answer. And as a result of that, it's a very easy headphone to live with as a daily driver. Now, could you go out and buy something that excels more in any one category? Well, absolutely. But you will have to be willing to sacrifice the balance that you get from something like this for something that does things a little bit differently. Now, with all that said, let's talk about objective valuation and frequency response. Here's a frequency response graph against our Harman combined target. You see that it has pretty solid bass extension. The bass goes nice and deep, but it doesn't have a shelf. The mid-range is pretty even across the board. We don't get bloated mid-bass, though we do get just a hair of warmth at 200 Hertz. Not really enough to make the headphones sound warm, but it is there. As we move up, we get a little bit of elevation around 1 to 1.5 kilohertz, and then it dips slightly back down around 2K. We have decent ear gain though, it doesn't slip off into the void, which is nice, and it becomes relatively target adherent for the most part. We do have some slight recesses throughout the treble, but it still stays in line. This does mean we have a little bit less treble than some things like, say, the Aeon Noir, for example, but it also means the headphone sounds a little bit smoother. Overall, Clear is a decent measuring headphone. There's nothing about it that stands out as particularly offensive, and that does speak to this headphone as a whole. It's a very inoffensive, well-rounded headphone. And with all that said, let's talk about power and amplification. Now you could run this headphone off basically any amplifier, but what I chose to run it with and what I enjoyed it with the most, well, you might not expect at first. And that was an OTL tube amp. Now, this is not a high impedance headphone, and generally speaking, high impedance headphones are what you want with an OTL, but I used this with a number of amps around here, and well, one I enjoyed it a lot with was a tube-rolled dark voice of all things. It sort of gave the headphone a bit of a downturn in frequency response, making it slightly more bassy and making the top end even smoother. Now this fixed what I refer back to in the beginning of the video as its timbre, just giving the headphone a slightly more inviting and colored sound, which very much emulates what I would describe as the euphoric sound people look for in tube systems. I never would have expected Clear to be the headphone that did that, but in this case it absolutely is, and that's how I use this headphone a lot at home. Here at the office I use it with a variety of other things, from some Class A solid-state amps to things in Topping's lineup. And while there isn't an amplifier in which I've been displeased with Clear's performance, I still have a strong preference towards using this headphone on tubes. And as you probably know, tube amps vary a lot. So your mileage may vary. If you do end up using it with a dark voice, I'd recommend turning down your DAC's input just a little bit. I was running this at around -10 decibels out of my DAC into my dark voice. So conclusion time. I've had a lot of nice things to say about the Clear, and I've really enjoyed it since buying it. It spends a lot of time on my head, and it will continue to do so. I don't think there's anything wrong with a headphone that's the safe option, with something that's the middle of the road. For me, that's an excellent spot for a headphone to be in, something that makes the works of a great daily driver. So that is going to wrap up this video, guys. If you liked it, leave a like down below, comment letting me know what you want to see in the future. If you want to get active in the community, you can at the forums at the link in the video description. As always, this headphone is available on headphones.com, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Till then, peace.